Hello everyone, welcome to this video where I speak about the morality of Dark Souls, and how Dark Souls does morality in general. What do I mean by morality? Well, I think we all know that's a messy subject with many pitfalls. So, I am going to be using what I have gathered to be the main perception of the players of Dark Souls. For instance, Lautrec is pretty much universally considered to be a pretty big dick, and Solaire isn't called Sunbro for nothing. So, I am going to speak about the good guys and explain how it is that From makes us realize these people are good and how they make us realize that others are the bad guy, be it through their actions, subtext, and other clues towards their personality and desires. Several characters of course don't really fit on the scale of good and bad, they are just filler character, neutral to the world presumable like most of us, not sliding extremely into one way or another. But with that out of the way, let's start off with everyone's favorite Sunbro. Solaire is considered to be one of the nicest, most friendly and overtly helpful characters in the entire Souls series. He speaks to you in a jovial tone, without worry or concern for how undead, unfit and underprepared the chosen undead is. He is presented to us as a shining beacon of hope. This is only to be further emphasized by the fact that when we first encounter him, he is bathed in sunlight, overlooking a cliff. From is clearly trying to subconsciously instill within our minds that this is a good man. If that also wasn't enough, he is the person who invites you to take part in jolly cooperation, handing you the white sign soapstone, and in this sense Solaire is the exact opposite of Card, giving you the red eye orb. One seeks to help all of those struggling individuals across the gaps in time, while one wishes to see you seek out and slaughter those same undead, which once again subconsciously creates a dichotomy between him being good and the Dark Wraiths being bad. And then there is the fact that he's the face, the person most associated with the Sunlight Covenant. A group dedicated to jolly cooperation. I don't know about you, but during my first playthrough, seeing those golden signs scattered around were a comforting sight, like they were saying that it's fine, if you need help, we are here to help. And Solaire being the de facto face and for a long time believed to actually be in a sense the leader of the Covenant. The very fact that their signs are golden instead of white is a subtle way to distinguish them, to make them stand out as valiant protectors. Of course Solaire is amongst those we are capable of summoning, for some of the more difficult bosses in the game for a new player, examples including gargoyles and the Orlando bear. Fighting alongside someone, even if they are just an NPC, builds up this sense of camaraderie, and as you slowly see him slip into despair you can really sort of connect with him on a more personal level, because you have overcome things together. And when you unfortunately have no choice but to put him down, to put an end to his journey, you are left feeling sad, sorrowful and regretful, questioning yourself for if there was something you could have done different, or maybe you curse the game or the cruel world of Dark Souls. Maybe you go to the wiki to find a way to save him and then spend your next playthrough gathering humanity to give to the fair lady so you can save him. The point is that his death leaves us with these strong feelings, which in turn adjust our own feelings towards the game and its world, our own morals so to speak. Why should we be merciful to a world that took our friend away? Why should we care about the NPCs which will just wander off and die or betray us? It's a shift that I believe was somewhat intentional by the developers, to only increase the level of cynicism we feel. Moving on, who can forget the first time we collectively walked up to the locked gates of Sense Fortress, absolutely lost, only to come across a sleeping knight with a helmet shaped like an onion. The hopelessly bumbling knight, despite quite obviously stumped, keeps up a jovial expression, laughing and chatting with you, who once again can be a naked ass hollow wielding in nothing but their fists. Onion Bro, despite all the love he gets from the community, isn't nearly as present as Solaire, in that while they have a similar number of in-person encounters, you can't summon him for any of the actual bosses that you face, and he also, unlike his Dark Souls 3 counterpart, doesn't assist you in fighting any enemies along the way of your journey, at least not till the almost very end of his journey, that is. But his constant confidence and yet obvious lack of ability to deal with what is stumping him, is an endearing thing, and his design, its plump roundness gives off a far less threatening visage than some of the other characters in the game. Even as you slowly break down his confidence, taking away or completing every challenge before he is able to do so, leaving him questioning his own ability and worth as a knight, he is jovial towards you, still offering his hand in assisting you and providing gifts to you. It really shines through just how he is a good man. And when it comes to his final blaze of glory against those horrible creatures in Izalith, even if you steal from him what he considers his last chance to die with glory, even if you rip everything from him, he doesn't turn hostile, he doesn't become an enemy, and instead, he continues to speak with you and even thanks you. Regardless, up until the end, he is always polite, and that isn't something you can say about other characters. And when his end comes, we are once again left questioning not his morality, but our own for our actions in stealing everything from this man, who lived for adventure and to prove himself. From clearly wants us to consider this man to be a friend and someone we can connect with, otherwise we wouldn't have been so invested in his death. Dusk of Oolacile, the princess of the Lost Land, which we first encounter locked away within one of Seath's columns. Someone who is cordial, polite, thankful, and helpful to the chosen dead after they have been rescued from captivity. She is a gentle soul, which speaks with a gentle voice, and plays the role of damsel in distress more than once in the game, as stated before being captured by Seath, and the second time is when she gets nabbed by Manus and dragged into the abyss. While our interactions with her are limited, she is unquestionable kind, being willing to teach you what was essentially a lost form of magic, the magic of Oolacile, which she was the last inheritor of in the current time. I don't know, but handing over what is your country's magical secrets, which from what we know weren't widely shared, speaks to me of her being someone with a kind spirit. We are only further given greater insight of her by how Elizabeth, the giant mushroom woman in the DLC, tells you to go save her from Manus, because she is effectively helpless and not even the great Artorias would be able to manage it. If you want a pretty clear comparison, she is the Zelda to Manus's Ganon or Princess Peaches to Manus's Bowser, a princess in captivity we are sent to save for the good of her people. Really, it's a clear comparison that I wouldn't be surprised if they drew upon what with how Dark Souls is clearly inspired by Zelda in other aspects. From also has another way of making certain that we perceive her as a morally outstanding individual. In her appearance, she wears a white dress, one which hasn't a speck of dirt or blood upon it. That alone is enough to give the implication of someone who is pure, and when appearance is something that matters in this game, the intention of her being a good person is very clear. Compiling this with her further characterization as a fun-loving childish girl who would sneak off, it's hard to paint her in the light of a villain regardless of your own feelings regarding the trope of a damsel in distress. She is a victim, and it's hard to do anything but sympathize with a victim, another subtle way which alters our perception of her, only further added onto by the fact that you find her sobbing, seemingly unconscious after you find her. That's not something you expect from a bad person. Few characters make the jump between Dark Souls 1 and 3, even fewer of them are friendly. Andre is the helpful smith you first meet when descending down from the bonfire outside of Sen's fortress or up from the Titanite demon which lives below his workshop. He greets you with politeness and is happy to work with you and even inform you about the difference between different methods of upgrading your weapons and suggesting that you take a smith box with you so that you can repair your items on the go. He wishes you well when you leave, something that can't be said for every NPC you have such interactions with. When you bring him the large and very large embers, he is overjoyed, excited to be able to produce even greater tiers of weapons for you to make use of. The idea that someone is happy to craft something for you, rather than just doing it because you're a customer or for their own reasons, really does put him in a positive light when compared to the other smiths in the game. Him also being the first blacksmith you come across plays a role in our perception of him. The sound of his ever-present hammering away on metal becomes an ever-present yet oddly comforting sound for those of us who try to assault the bell gargoyles, and the fact that he grants us our first weapon upgrades, allowing us to more easily put down those frustrating foes, subconsciously marks him as a friend, as a force for good in your journey to either link the flame or become the Dark Lord. He is at your back cheering you on the entire way. Then there is his appearance. He is a large muscular man, but has an aged face with a long full white beard, I know several people have made the connection between him and Santa, so even in his design works he is a comforting presence, not clad in armor, not decaying or insane, and not an abomination against God. He is the one thing in the entire world of Dark Souls which is a constant sense of good for us as we march forwards into hell. Be they Sun Brothers, members of the Blades of the Dark Moon, or just some random undead offering out a hand to one who is stuck in their travels across Lordran, those helpful spirits summoned across the gaps in the world are an unfaltering relief to those undead who are unable to continue marching forwards on their own. It isn't hard to see how these people are presented as heroes. They save people from suffering and help them overcome any obstacle or die trying. Some might be tragic heroes and others valiant defenders of the weak, but altogether they are presented as being unquestionable heroic. This is obviously displayed by the colors chosen to cover these figures when they come to your world, be they pure white to demonstrate purity and innocence, or a dazzling gold shining with the power of the sun as they illuminate the path to victory. Everything about these colors brings forwards feelings of reassurance, of calm and of safety. The Blades of the Dark Moon are a little different. They aren't individuals who you work alongside on your journey, they are like the police force of Dark Souls, working in the background to hunt down killers, so that others undead caused to suffer unjustly can feel avenged. They shine with a deep blue color resembling the color of a police car's flashing light as they chase down the guilty for the sake of righteous vengeance. A force that does not discriminate. All who are found to be guilty are hunted down with equal fever, even the weakest, the poorest or the least accomplished undead has their death treated with just as much seriousness as one who stands at the doors to the final battle. It is this impartial action which allows them to be viewed, not with the same negativity as an invader, but rather the positivity of a hero on the prowl for the next criminal to strike down where they stand. Bad character. Bad as in the sense of being evil, or bringing about negative emotions within the player, those who are presented to us in the simplest ways as being in the wrong for whatever reason. It might be the way they appear to us, their actions, or what they don't do which might impart onto us the greater sense of malice that comes from these characters. Starting off, I'd like to get into the Embraced Knight. Lautrec the Embraced, he is first introduced to us being locked up in a cell with no way out. Already it is subconsciously implanted into our minds that something is wrong here, someone locked away within a cell within a church, hidden behind a destructible wall which is already out of the way from where the chosen dead direct path would take them. Then there is his voice, his tone, and the way he asks us to set him free from his cell. It would be wrong to judge someone just by first appearance, but even so, From has obviously gone out of their way to make his voice appear as off-putting and understandable unnerving as possible without just sticking a big glowing sign above his head that says he is the bad guy. If you either don't find him here or you don't release him before you kill the Bell Gargoyles, you will next encounter him at Firelink Shrine, a place which until now was a safe haven for you character, a place where they could feel at home and just listen to the somber tune as it plays through the area as one of the few places in the game with music that isn't a boss fight. But now with Lautrec here planted squarely across from the mute Firekeeper, things are suddenly changing in ways which make it feel a lot less safe than it first did. Then there is the dialogue he has, both regarding other NPCs you can meet around the game and the Firekeeper, which point towards him being a much crueler sort than even his first appearance would indicate. Everything he says has this underlying sense of a threat within it, not towards you but rather towards the world you are in. You can tell he is up to something, that he has a job to do, but you have no idea what that is, and he seems to have a negative perception of the Firekeeper, who up to this point is mute, trapped and perhaps mutilated. Him having such negative things to say about a defenseless character only further puts him into a negative light. And then there is the final nail in the coffin. He kills the Firekeeper, an individual who is already trapped within a cage and is of no harm to anyone. Him killing her serves two purposes. First, it cements in our minds that he is in fact the bad guy, and it also gives us a personal stake in hunting him down and seeing to it that he is punished. Our slaying him in an Orlando with his two companions is sweet justice, and allows us to restore the Firelink bonfire along with its Firekeeper. The first encounter people have with Patches is in the catacombs. He is standing suspiciously close to a switch which caused a platform you walk on to rotate, throwing you to your death below if you aren't fast enough. He tries to play it off as an accident if you live or if you die, but his intentions are clear to anyone who listens to his nervous speech. He clearly didn't expect you to come back and confront him about his little trick. He also questions you about if you're a cleric. At this point in time the only clerics you are likely to have met are Petress and Rhea along with her two companions, the latter which while not initially being a merchant is quite polite with you, while Petress at this point has been a helpful merchant providing early game characters with some handy miracles which allow them to make an easier trek through the game. The fact Patches obviously dislikes the idea of clerics is a subtle way to make us even more suspicious of him, not helping that if you tell him yes, he is liable to turn hostile to you. On top of this, if one is to speak with Lautrec before encountering Patches, they get a further negative impression of him. The second encounter people have with Patches, or the first if you skip his first meeting, is in the Tomb of the Giants where you find him standing over a cliff edge, inviting you over to have a look at the treasure which lays below, before kicking whoever is foolish enough to play into Patches' games, down into the pit below. He'll laugh and mock you, telling you that he'll strip the fear from your corpse. While you're down there you can come across Rhea, who alongside her two companions were tricked by Patches and subsequently left in the dark. Her two friends have gone hollow and are now hostile to you, so you must put them down both so you can safely leave this pit and so that Rhea might return to safety. Once you climb out of the pit alive or you die trying and respawn at whatever bonfire you last rested at, only to make your way down there again, you will find Patches still waiting for you. He will beg for forgiveness, and provided you haven't told you're a cleric he will ask for your forgiveness. If you say no he'll bribe you with humanity. Everything Patches does is put into perspective in your third encounter, when he has made his way to Firelink Shrine, setting himself up as a merchant, selling off the goods he no doubt collected from other helpless travelers he kicked into a pit and left to rot away before looting everything they have. At his core, Patches is a self-serving individual without any issues killing innocents and criminals alike. As long as he himself can continue to survive he seems uncaring for any sort of pain his victims might go through. Petress is one of the first NPC anyone can come across, occupying the area of Firelink Shrine. He is seen willing to converse with the chosen undead, but if you look closer at his actions from an early point you can start to see his image crack. The first thing which tips you off that his moral scale slides down into the negative side is that he is apparently willing to sell equipment only meant for elite clerics to some random who is willing to give him souls, so his faith in his own religion isn't the greatest. That's not exactly bad, but it does give you an idea of what sort of person is. Then there is the fact that if you subscribe to the idea that the hidden chests round the back of Firelink belong to him, as considered due to the fact they contain cleric-style weaponry and equipment, that he is also ready and prepared to engage in some murder and invasion using the cracked red-eye orbs he has stashed down there. Anyone who is willing to invade another world with the intention of causing harm is quite easily placed into the negative morality scale, just from our own interaction with such people. And then there is the fact that he is willing to explain to you, a new initiate in his religion, about an apparently very important job that undead clerics of his order are supposed to undertake to search for kindling, or rather the rite of kindling, all for the sake of a relatively small number of souls, once again highlighting a lack of importance his own religion plays in his actions. Then there is his actions in dealing with Rhea. Oh boy, the implications of what he has to say to you after you find out about him abandoning her down in the Tomb of the Giants is quite something. To say he gives off a negative impression would be an understatement, possible being one of the few NPC and certainly the most direct one to point you in the direction of committing evil actions of your own against the other NPCs in your world. Then the final nail coffin comes when you rescue Rhea and she returns to the undead parish to pray. If you don't deal with Petress yourself, he will ascend the elevator and murder her in cold blood. Not only killing an innocent but also removing the advanced miracle trainer from the game entirely. If murder wasn't already enough of a reason to easily consider him the bad guy in this situation, From goes out of its way to tie his actions into the player's own progression, removing what might be an important resource for you. Before we even reach the entrance to Izalith, we are told about the Lost Land, consumed by the Chaos Flame, by Quelana and by item descriptions. We are presented with nothing but negative implications regarding Chaos, the wild and untamed life-giving flame that the Witch of Izalith birthed into creation through her arrogance. We are told about Chaos brings suffering, from how Kalag and her sister were grotesquely transformed, gaining the bodies of giant spiders rather than human bodies. We are told that the witch herself is suffering in agony and has been doing so in atonement for years. We are told that the demons birthed from the flame are evil. This stems all the way back to our first encounter in the Undead Asylum, where the large demon blocks our path and unceremoniously tries to crush us before we can even shake of the dust of being locked up in our cell for who knows how many years. Then there is our next encounter in the Undead Berg. Once again a demon blocks our path, and that continues to be a common thread even before we learn that we must acquire the witch's soul for the Lord Vessel. It seems like the demons are invading Lordran, and a place which seems to have fallen into ruin, a ruin which seems to be the result of the demons invading, if the words of the undead merchant can be taken at face value, given how he complains mainly about the demons invading. Then when you actually get to see Izalith, it seems to be in ruins, flooded with lava and infested with demons which may have once been its people, transformed horrifically by the bed of chaos. Seeing such destruction, you can only imagine what it looked like before the devastation took hold. The fact that everyone addresses the place as Lost Izalith certainly implies that it has fallen, and we are left with the obvious implication behind that being the birth of demons, which rampage through the area, using it to protect the demonic source of all this suffering. Then there is the fact that the Witch of Izalith has not only indirectly brought these demons into existence, making your job so much harder, but also serves as one of the most annoying bosses in the game. It's almost as if the game itself is trying to antagonize you, trying to make you angry at the Chaos Flame. Masterfully they have Quelana speak on how the Chaos Flame enveloped her mothers and sister, asking you to put them out of their misery. This is a character who has helped to train you to be a better pyromancer, who has helped you along on your journey, and who is quite frankly the only NPC you can talk to normally who has a direct connection to Izalith, so you are more inclined to believe her. The Age of Fire, or the Age of Light, is a period in time we as the player never actually get to see at its full height. We are always brought into the game in the waning days of the flame. We are told that this is an age when people can once again die as humans, when the undead curse is purified from the land and people can continue to live on as they did, happy, safe, and secure. The gods fought to bring in this age from the grey, fighting the ancient dragons for the right to have a time when they could walk atop the earth, when they could be able to choose, and when they could rule this land they now wandered. The Age of Fire is a time before rot and ruin sinks in as the undead curse begins to turn people into mindless zombies which attack the normal people, and the process continues, until we are left in the state where the game begins. The sacrifice of the player at the end of the game is supposed to be the beacon of hope for a world reborn anew. We are given a chance to save the world by giving up ourselves to the flame as Gwyn did, allowing people to continue to live on and be happy. The way that everyone describes this age, or the coming of a new Age of Fire, is with such positivity, it's impossible not to believe that this is the right thing to do. If you want to make all the suffering that the NPCs have gone through worth it, if you want Solaire's death in Izalith to mean something, if you want Onion Bro's demise in Ash Lake to mean something, if you want all those summons you had fight alongside you feel like they fulfilled their purpose, if you want all the other countless undead sacrifices, wandering the lands of Lordran and beyond to be worth something, then lighting the flame really is the only option available to you, because otherwise you cast aside their will and saying that them helping you to reach that point wasn't worth it, that you don't care about them and would rather let the world to continue to fall into a chaotic mess of hollows and undead until everything is like Lordran or Izalith, when every one thing is in ruins for the sake of your desires. And I doubt that the fact it is named the Age of Fire or the Age of Light is any mistake. Light is comforting, it illuminates the world for us and dispels the fear of that which we cannot see hiding in the dark. It allows us to see the world for what it really is and allows color to shine throughout the world, displays this quite evidently by showing us how the world is crumbling, and where the fire is at its weakest you find grey or even dark patches, lacking color. The grey, the time before time, the presumed beginning of all things. When the ancient dragons ruled the land, we don't know much about this age as we don't get to experience it, and the only NPCs which existed during this era are Seath and Kalameet, along with presumable undead dragons, but none of those guys are talking. This age came to an end with the birth of fire, an event which sparked life on the planet and bringing an end to the static world. The Age of Grey can be thought of as a state of stasis, where nothing changes, nothing is invented, and all purpose is gone. It is a hell for any living being and a place where no human nor god could have survived in. That was why the end of this age, as the gods fought to bring in the Age of Fire, is seen as a glorious thing, remembered in legend and record into stories which become miracles. The actions of ending the Age of Ancients were the confirmation of their desire to live, to progress and to break through the grey and fill the world with color. It's no mistake that From chose to use grey coloration for this time period, a dull color, trapped between light and dark but not committing to either, subconsciously planting the unliving status of this time period. It is also the era before civilization, before the weak could be sheltered from the harshness of the world, and where everything and everyone was left to their own devices, exemplified by Seath, an ancient dragon born without the scales of his brethren, burdened with the fate of his eventual erasure, a fate which was completely unknowable to the undying dragons, yet these dragons also possessed a treasure, the primordial crystal, which imparts imperfect immortality. This is a treasure which could have bestowed Seath the same kind of immortality as his dragon kin, but this was never a consideration, as we are told Seath plundered the crystal, not that he was given it. In an area before civilization, before community has been born, and where one's own might is what they must rely on, this time period can only be considered a savage era lacking in kindness. This era, its collapse by the hands of the lords, with the treachery of Seath, can be seen as a motion of civility triumphing over bestial nature. The lords worked together, with soldiers and armies at their back. They worked with an individual who should have been their enemy, reaching common ground based upon a common goal and mutual benefit. This was the first major alliance between conflicting parties in the world of Dark Souls, and it was accomplished for the sake of bringing an end to this age, and that is something From conveys very subtle in the intro to the game. The Dark. The first thing we learn about the Dark is that it is the opposite of fire, that is introduced into us by the opening cutscene, and from there we are told all the great things about the Age of Fire, and with us knowing that the Age of Dark is the opposite of the Age of Fire, we are already predisposed to think of it in a negative light, even before we learn the approaching Age of Dark. With the fading of the flame is the reason the curse of the undead has begun to flare up around the world. Then the next immediately accessible impression of the Dark comes from the remains of New Londo, the flooded, ghost-infested city that was sacrificed for the sake of containing the Four Kings and the Dark Wraiths, individuals consumed by the Dark and turned into murderous killers who would bring about the death of all things and become the enemy of all things which have a soul, as we are told by Ingward, one of the seals of New Londo. Our next possible run-in would be with the Dark, and those creatures which dwell within it would be Karth, a primordial serpent claiming to be seeking the true Dark Lord, while at the same time running a covenant for individuals who indiscriminately hunt down innocents across worlds to slaughter them, bring them to despair and potentially cause them to go hollow. Outside of Petres, Karth is the only NPC in the game which actively encourages violence against everyone, NPC and other players alike. Considering he is said to be the one who taught the Four Kings the art of life drain, which is what resulted in the entire city being flooded to contain them, and now Karth is trying to do the same thing with you, without a single shred of remorse for what his actions have brought upon innocent people, it's hard not to consider him on the lower end of the moral spectrum. Not helping his appeal is the fact that he literally exists within the abyss, a place where no human can naturally survive. Even an undead such as us require special help to even stand in the abyss, which is just as obvious a representation of the Dark as you can get. The third and final time we tango with the Dark is in Oolacile. This place is absolutely wrecked by the Dark, from the townspeople being transformed in a way not too dissimilar to the way people were transformed by the Chaos Flame, bringing up the comparison of both of them being cruel, merciless forces which don't care for the people they mutilate and twist to their own needs. Only the dark is far more dangerous, as we see its capacity to even corrupt one of the 4 Knights of Gwyn, who at this point we have been told was a gallant knight, someone with an unbreakable will, who charged into the dark headfirst for the sake of a threatened land and to retrieve a captured princess, the same princess we had the pleasure of meeting in the present. And then we get to see him broken and twisted by the dark, turned into a monster as he gave away his greatest defense to protect his friend. This displays the dark merciless nature, which shows no mercy for any and which has no intention of allowing people to live in peace. Now, with all of that said and done, forget it. Black and white morality doesn't exist in Dark Souls. It's all a shroud put in place by the developers to sway us one way or the other, to convince us with half-truths and false demonstrations of character. The greatest thing about Dark Souls morality is that it is an evolving one. You can play the entire game doing the linking of the fire ending, doing everything possible within that playthrough, and yet when you reach the kiln and you burn up, becoming the next Lord of Cinder, all without celebration, without congratulation, and without knowing that it is inevitable, just another pile of ash piled up among thousands of corpses. The more you play Dark Souls, the more you read the lore, the more you put in the missing links between characters, filling in the gaps where From has deliberately left them for us to craft our own narrative. Things become a lot less like a straight line between good and bad and more like a spiral, with everything and everyone slowly but surely twisting around in it as things like morals and human sense of preservation can get lost. Even characters which seem to be firmly placed into their alignment can become twisted in your own mind simply by the observations of the world and your own experiences within it. Dark Souls doesn't ask you who is right and who is wrong, it doesn't even ask you what you think at all. It gives you bits and pieces, but you're on your own to figure out how to put them together, which allows for any number of characters' morality to change within your own version, one which evolves over time as you age, experience more and come to different conclusions. The most obvious change in morality that has come with time is that of the Dark and Chaos themselves, 2 things which were prominently displayed as a negative thing within the game and within the Dark Souls community, until a new piece of the puzzle was added onto the pile. Suddenly the Dark is gentle and embraced all, while Chaos was far closer to the first flame than those in the world were willing to admit, bringing life into the world, in a not so dissimilar way to the first. But of course, there are others who shift in this alignment. Kirk, for instance, a selfish murderer, or a kind soul fighting an endless fight for a blind, dying woman who all but gave her life for the good of another. Solaire, brave knight who came to Lordran on a noble quest, or madman seeking something which doesn't exist. And that is what is so special about Dark Souls morality. I guess this was a very long video all for that, huh? But I felt like it was important to express how the game and From attempt to convince you of one thing through actions and through lore, but at the same time leave enough of an open hole to take what they give us and turn it on its head. But regardless, that was the end of this video. I've been the Anonymous Weeb, and if anyone made it this far, leave a comment and let me know. I wish you a good day or night wherever you are.